Hello, my name's Solon, and we're going to be covering how and when to use a fire extinguisher. So the first question to ask yourself is, what is your motivation in a fire? Um, is it to save your own life, to save your family's life, to save your house, to save your business, to save your car? Um, the first step we want to do is about saving us. We are not replaceable. All the stuff is. So our first motivation is to save our friends, our family, our coworkers. Um, we don't want to be, suddenly get a bunch of adrenaline and think that we're super people and we have to go put out this fire. We're more important than the stuff. So what is a fire? A fire is just a chemical reaction that produces light, heat, and smoke. That's it. There's nothing magical about it. This reaction will always occur if there's the right amount of fuel, heat, and oxygen. Um, if that mix is just perfect, it's going to burn, period. Um, so how do we stop a fire? We stop a fire by getting rid of the fuel, the heat, or the oxygen. It's that simple. So how do we put this out? Well, oxygen is in the air around us. But if I covered the fire with something so it couldn't touch the air, it would stop burning because I wouldn't have the oxygen with the fire and the fuel. So cutting off the oxygen is a way to stop the fire. If I could get rid of the heat by cooling the fire would stop. And maybe you've seen um, firefighters spraying things with water during a response, and that's to cool it down. The fire doesn't do well when it's cold. Um, and of course, if I get rid of the fuel, like when you turn off the gas to a stove, the fire stops because there's no fuel. It needs all three to burn. If I can get rid of any one of them, the fire is going to stop. Usually the easiest thing for a small fire is to cover it so it gets no oxygen, but it depends on the type of fire what the best response is. Fires have been separated into different classes, so we know how best to fight them. A Class A fire is our ordinary things that we think would burn, like wood, paper, plastic, garbage. These things are just, things you associate with a fire. Now, Class B fires are other things that are obvious when associated with fire, like grease, gasoline, oil, solvents. But you can see that these present a completely different challenge as a fuel than wood. If you sprayed a gasoline fire with water, the gasoline is going to float on top of the water. So we're not going to put out the fire because the gasoline still is touching the air and still can burn. So we're going to have to fight these fires differently. Class C fires are our electrical fires. Things like appliances, switches, electrical panels, outlets, power tools. When you use a power tool too hard, the motor can burn out and you actually can have so much heat build up that it starts a fire. Um, Sometimes a panel will have electricity arc where it's not supposed to and a fire can start. Electrical outlets, again, could have a short and electricity can go where it's not supposed to, have a source of heat now, and things that are flammable, the things around it, like plastic, wood, or something, could catch fire. Class K fires is a good example of when they've really become specific. So Class K fire is our kitchen oil fires. So we already talked about oil fires before, right? Well, this is just kitchen oil fires, like our deep fryers, butter, lard, grease. Um, and when we get a more narrow classification, it means we can fight it with a better product. So there are other classes of fire, like for metal and other things. So we're not going to go over all the classes of fire, but just know that for certain types of materials, there might be a better way to put something out with a different type of chemical than the normal class A, B, C chemicals that we use. For kitchen fires, again, like we said before for flammable liquids, we never use water because the water will A, sink to the bottom if it's given a chance, but B, more likely, these oils in the kitchen are boiling super hot, right? So when you pour water in it, the water will instantly evaporate and cause an actual, explosion of gas. And because the water vapor has turned to gas, and now it's throwing the flammable oil into your face, and it will erupt in fire. And yeah, it causes major damage and major injuries. So never use water to put out a kitchen oil fire. So those are the type of fires that we're normally going to see. So what kind of extinguishers are we going to use to fight those fires? A dry chemical extinguisher is the most common type of extinguisher you're going to see. They're the best all-around choice by far, and they work by putting a thin film of powder coating the fuel. So it's like you put a blanket over the fuel. It can no longer touch the oxygen in the air, and therefore it can't burn, period. They make a real mess though. I mean, this is a very fine powder to make it work. And so when you use it indoors, it's going to make a horrible mess. You really might not ever fully clean a house that's had a dry powder extinguisher used. These can be made available in class ABC capable extinguishers or just BC capable extinguishers. So when you're buying a fire extinguisher, an important point to note is look on the side of the extinguisher and see what class of fires it is rated to fight. Because if you're thinking of using this on a camping trip and it says BC only, no, you need to be class A. That's the stuff you're going to be running into most of the time in a camping trip. There are also water extinguishers. These are your old-fashioned, but sometimes they're pressurized, but sometimes you actually have to pump the water out of them. But they're only good for Class A fires. You can't use them, as I mentioned, on flammable liquids. And obviously, you wouldn't use them for Class C electrical fires because when you spray water on electrical, bad things happen. You actually create more paths for the electricity to go, and that could cause damage and injury. So you can only use a water extinguisher for a Class A fire. Um, as a matter of fact, if you had a metal fire, like sodium or something, they will make the situation much worse. So yeah, you only use the extinguisher for what's rated to fight. So another option available to us are carbon dioxide extinguishers. And they're rated for Class B and C fires only, not Class A. And they're also not for metal fires, Class D. Again, I don't want to get into all the subclasses, but they're there. Um, so how they work is they put out a carbon dioxide stream of gas. It's just, a stream of gas goes out, and when you push that stream of gas over the fire, well, now there's no air in contact with the fire. It's CO2 in contact with the fire. Since there's no air, there's no oxygen, therefore the fire can't keep burning. The great thing about them is they don't leave a residue. So if you had some electronics, you could spray a CO2 extinguisher at that electronic fire and the fire will go out because, again, there's no oxygen in contact with it. The problem, though, is we got to remember sometimes an electrical fire will keep on sparking because the electricity hasn't been turned off. So if it keeps on sparking and my extinguisher runs out, the fire is going to come back. Whereas if I use a class ABC extinguisher with a powder covering it, even if the heat continues to be there, it's going to have a hard time continuing to burn because it can't touch the oxygen because there's this powder coating the fuel. The other thing with a carbon dioxide extinguisher is they have a very short range, 3 to 8 feet. It's not like you're spraying water or you're spraying solid powder out at something. It's a gas, and that gas rapidly dissipates into the air around us. Don't worry about this gas hurting you. CO2 is in the air we breathe already. So unless you're in a very confined space, then you're not going to have too much CO2 in the air around you. So when do you fight a fire? That's actually more important than knowing how to fight a fire. Well, you never fight a fire until after the alarm has been raised. We need to be yelling the second we think there's a fire, fire. We need to get people evacuating or helping us to put out the fire. We need to call 911, pull the fire alarm for the building, notify security at the site if present. There's things that need to be happening to spread the alarm because Once that fire starts going, it might get worse. And we might lose the time to have people leave the building. The exit might be blocked by fire very quickly if we don't start the alarm immediately. So we start the alarm. We get people coming to help us and we get people evacuated. Now, can you do all that stuff I just talked about? You may need help. So when you're raising the alarm, look for folks. And if they seem to be able to respond when you tell them to do something, great, assign them tasks. Some people are not going to respond. They're going to be wide-eyed and confused because not everyone reacts to an emergency well. For those people, you just want them to evacuate. But if someone seems alert and responsive, assign them tasks so you can get to putting out that fire quicker. John, go pull the fire alarm. It's over there. Tell them where it is so they can go do it. Jane, go get me that extra extinguisher. I might need more than one extinguisher to put this fire out. Any other task you need, assign people to do. So you go call 911 now. Um, or hey, go get me the hose from around the house. Turn the water on now. Go get me that hose. Um, you can't do everything in an emergency. You have to, be able to delegate as quickly as possible. And remember, the faster you get to putting that fire out, the smaller it is and easier it is to put out. So every second you spend raising the alarm and, doing other tasks means that fire gets bigger. And by the time you get to it, you may not be able to put it out. But you know what? The people are more important. So maybe that building just goes up. That is what it is. But if you can get help quickly and get to that fire response and trying to put it out quickly, you have a great chance of being successful. Now you've raised the alarm and you've gotten help. Can you just go fight a fire? No. Sorry, not yet. You can only fight a fire when you know for a fact you can leave safely. If there's a chance that that fire can cut you off, if there's a chance there's so much smoke that you might not be able to see to get out, or you may become a casualty because you fall down unconscious because there's too much smoke. Um, if you can get trapped, you can't see, you can't go fight that fire. Sorry, you're more important. So you have to go be, calm and assess it honestly. Is that too much fire? Is that a too unsafe an area for me to go put out? Well, what supplies do you have? If you only have an extinguisher, what can an extinguisher really do? Most extinguishers only spray for 8 to 30 seconds. How much fire can you put out in 8 to 30 seconds? Not a lot. A trash can size fire is what we like to talk about. That size fire and extinguisher is very good at putting out. And if you use an extinguisher correctly, it only takes a second or two to put out that small size fire. It really does. Um, if you use it incorrectly, it's not going to put out the fire, but we'll talk about that in a second. So let's say you think this is a small fire and a fire extinguisher has enough material in it to put it out. So the term to remember is pass. So pass stands for P, pull the pin. There is a pin, and you can see it under picture number 1, that the pulling the pin out, and that pin prevents the handles from being squeezed. So the pressure will be able to be released when you squeeze those handles. But that pin prevents you from accidentally squeezing it and letting it off when you're just moving an extinguisher. So the pin has to be pulled out. That pin is usually held on by a plastic restraining strap. So there's two things about this plastic restraining strap. If you try and grab the extinguisher by the handle and you're squeezing the handle, and then you try and pull the pin out, it's acting like a pair of pliers on the pin. You're squeezing it onto the pin. So it's not going to come out easily. So first, put the extinguisher down on a solid surface like a table or the floor. Hold it by the body of the extinguisher so you're not squeezing the handle, and then pull the pin. If the plastic restraining strap is too strong for you to pull and break, then as you pull the pin, twist the pin like a screwdriver and do several circles, and it'll wrap the plastic strap around the pin, and the leverage you get from the width of the pin will be enough for you to break the strap and then pull the pin. Okay, so you've pulled the pin. Now you're going to aim the extinguisher. Some extinguishers have hoses, some don't. So if you have a hose, you're going to be with one hand aiming the hose and the other hand holding the squeeze triggers so that you're ready to let the pressure out of the cylinder. You want to stand back at least 8 to 10 feet. You've never shot this extinguisher ever. So you don't know if it's going to spray out a lot or just a little bit. You don't know how far it shoots. So you're going to, from a distance, give it a quick squeeze so you know how far it shoots. Now, if you're too far back, you're going to take some steps to get close enough so that that curtain of the material from the extinguisher is hitting the base of the fire. You aim where the fuel is, not where the bright flames are. So aim low, shoot the fire base, and briefly cover it with powder. Or if you're using a water extinguisher, you're going to soak the fuel with water. And again, if you're using a CO2 extinguisher, you're going to be shooting at the fuel to envelop the fuel with CO2 gas. Now, you stay at that distance that you can shoot and get that material at that fuel. You don't get closer. You're spraying a pressurized material out of this canister. If you're too close, you can actually blow the fuel up into the air. And fuel mixed with air burns better, not worse. So you never would stick an extinguisher straight into a trash can. You would blow the trash into the air and you'd have a fireball. You're going to stay at that safe distance where you know that the spray of material is just covering the fuel. So you've squeezed it, you got an idea of the distance, and then you sweep the nozzle or the aiming point of the extinguisher and sweep it back and forth, left and right, to get that powder evenly coating the fuel. If you do that, you can put out a small fire, and I mean this, in less than a second. You have extra material there, so you can monitor that fire. So you don't leave a fire after you've put it out. You've squeezed that handle, you've put that material over the fire, it seems to be out, but you're going to stay there just in case. Fires have a great knack for restarting. So we're not going to leave it until we know that fire is out. And if it's a big fire and the fire department's coming, we're going to stay there until the fire department gets here and they say it's out. So let's look at a few examples. How would you put out these fires? So remember, we can either get rid of the heat, we can get rid of the fuel, or we can get rid of the air. So on the barbecue on the left, I could potentially just turn off the fuel, right? There's the knobs right there. Or I could just close the lid. The air inside that lid is going to burn up quickly, and then there's not going to be any more air, and then the fire's going out. For that pot, if I had a lid, I could literally just cover it, right? And then it's not getting the air, and the fire goes out instantly. No more problems. How would you put out this fire? If you had an extinguisher, how would you put this fire out? You wouldn't. You can't put this fire out. It's too big for an extinguisher. I said 8 to 30 seconds of spraying time, and there's far more fire than 8 to 30 seconds. So again, part of this is calmly assessing what's in front of you and not trying to put out something you can't. The worst one I've ever seen is a video of a gentleman trying to put out a jumbo jet on fire with a fire extinguisher. And he runs up to a burning engine and sprays the extinguisher for 30 seconds at that engine. And for that moment, for those 30 seconds, the fire goes away on that one spot. Then he runs out and the fire bursts up again and he has to run for his life. So we never try to fight a fire that's too big for the materials we have. Well, how would you put out this fire? You just turn the knob, right? Turn the knob, shut off the fuel, and no more fire. So again, we're always trying to cut off the fuel, the oxygen, or the heat. How would we put out this fire? Probably just closing the lid, right? That would most likely put out the fire. The only problem we have is how hot has this gotten? Are those plastic lids starting to burn? So we close it, we run away, we back up. This would be a good one to spray the outside of the thing with water so the metal stays cool, and we're removing some of the heat as well as the oxygen, and between the two, the fire will hopefully go out. How would we put out this fire? Well, there's a lid. We would just cover it, right? But let's say there wasn't a lid and I had a fire extinguisher. Again, I'm going to pull the pin, aim the extinguisher, and then from a distance, I'm going to spray the powder over the fuel. Can you see how if I put the nozzle right real close to this trash can and into the fuel area, it will blow the fuel into the air. All the loose paper and everything will go into the air. And now that's where those flames are. So I'm going to have a fireball in my face, and there's a great chance of injury. So we never put an extinguisher that close. All right, so you now know how to fight a fire, you know what the classes of fire are, and you know how to use an extinguisher. So let's put some extinguishers around our building. Where we're going to put them? Near sources of heat, where we expect there to be a fire, like kitchens, fireplaces, barbecues, any place that you expect there's going to be a fire. Do consider placing a red arrow sign above extinguishers. A lot of times we mount extinguishers lower because that's easier for us to grab. If we mount them high, we couldn't grab them. So if they're mounted a little low, you can't see that as you walk around. There's furniture in the way, there's stuff in the way. So putting a sign a little higher where we can actually see will let everyone know if there's a fire, here's where the extinguisher is. If you're at work, there are definitely legal requirements for where extinguishers should be placed, how close they need to be, what signs there need to be. So you'll have to check your local regulations on that. Should you inspect extinguishers? Well, yeah, you really should. Now, at home, there's no legal requirement. At work, there are legal requirements. So at work, monthly inspections are usually the norm. You'll see these tags on the side of the extinguisher, and there should be, you know, a check mark and some initials for each month that you inspected it or someone did. And what are you looking for when you inspect an extinguisher? It's easy. I'm not asking you to be an expert. You see that little gauge beneath the handle? Well, it should be in the green. If the needle is pointing in the green, it still has full pressure. You're good to go. If that needle was not in the green, too high or too low, that extinguisher needs to go. Now, can I just take it off at work and take it away? No. If you take an extinguisher off, you have to replace it right away because the fire could happen the second you leave. So we want those extinguishers always available. Other things to look for is obvious damage. If you see rust, if you see dents, if you see a cut hose, if the hose is clogged, if the pin is missing, something happened, right? Um, why is the pin missing? Is this really a fully charged extinguisher? I should really check out that gauge. Um, so when something's obviously damaged, it's time to replace it. We also want to check the area around the extinguisher. Very frequently, things get stacked up. We start putting boxes in one place, we start stacking stuff up. If you're blocking off an extinguisher, that's a safety issue. All our emergency equipment should remain available because when the fire happens, you don't have time to go move everything to get to it. Then you're just going to have a burning building and you have to evacuate. Do you need to replace extinguishers? Yeah, they're not good forever. After 12 years, you should consider replacing non-rechargeable extinguishers, but there are extinguishers you can actually get serviced and recharged. So if you have a really expensive extinguisher, you can take it to a local company and they'll tell you how much it is per extinguisher to have them pressure test it and recharge it, and you'll have it for another length of time. So yes, that's something that can be done. You should check your local business codes to see how frequently in a work environment that has to be done. So in conclusion, for everything you ever do, think it through. Fires you can fight. Small fires you can put out. You really can save lots of lives by paying attention and spreading the alarm and getting help. I mean, this is one of those moments that you will shine and that you can save a lot. Um, the trick to the emergency response is correctly identifying the problem. Is it an electrical fire that I can just turn off a switch? Is it a gas fire where I can just turn off the gas? Um, you get the assistance you need to do what needs to be done, and then do what you can within the limits of your training. You don't try and guess on what the next step is. If you don't know what you're doing, the firefighters don't want to rescue 2 people. They don't want to rescue 3 people. They want to rescue as few people as they have to. So only do what you know you can do safely. Remember our motto, everyone goes home every day.